The upcoming Britain-EU summit on May 19th will likely expand security and defense cooperation, aligning with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's efforts to reset ties with the European Union, an analyst told Reuters on Wednesday, May 15th. The big thing to look out for is whether that enables the UK to access EU funds for defense spending, and whether it enables closer EU cooperation on defense and military planning beyond what already exists, which at the moment are just some regular dialogues on shared security issues, said Olivia O'Sullivan, director of the UK in the World Programme at Chatham House. Among the key issues surrounding the upcoming summit, as highlighted by O'Sullivan, is the UK's resistance to joining an EU customs union, participating in the single market, and signing up to freedom of movement between the EU and the UK.
Some of the main outcomes we can probably expect from the summit is some kind of security and defence pact or agreement. The big thing to look out for is whether that enables the UK to access EU funds for defence spending and whether it enables closer EU cooperation on defence and military planning beyond what already exists, which at the moment are just some regular dialogues on shared security issues. On trade, we should look out for whether there might be some deals on the UK aligning with the EU in some specific sectors, particularly what's called SPS, which means animal and plant products. And we should also look out for whether there might be some agreements on mobility, so whether young people from the EU can come and study and work in the UK for a specified period of time, whether qualified professionals on either side can move between the two. Those are probably the three areas where we're likely to see some movement, but the devil will be in the details for all of these issues.
Starmer has acknowledged these challenging issues but expressed optimism in finding constructive ways to work together and deliver for the British people. O'Sullivan also pointed to the broader geopolitical context, noting that both the EU and the UK are concerned about an unpredictable America, the threat from Russia, and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. She said these shared concerns might lead to progress on long-standing sticking points, as both sides recognize their mutual interests and risks. Britain, which left the EU in 2020 after a landmark 2016 referendum vote, is trying to navigate the geopolitical and economic fallout from Trump's imposition of worldwide tariffs and questioning of U.S. security protections for allies. Starmer, who has prioritized security and defense since his election last year, is aiming to balance closer cooperation with the EU and enhanced economic ties with the United States by lowering certain U.S. import tariffs. Starmer's government was also elected on a mandate to grow the economy, a feat that has been made harder by tariff uncertainty, threatening a global slowdown. As part of the improved relations with Brussels, European leaders are also likely to demand a deal to allow young Europeans to live and work in Britain, a policy that risks angering those voters who backed Brexit, in part over concerns about immigration.
Cat number? Okay. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Some of the key sticking points on security and defence are whether the EU allows UK defence companies to access some of its defence funds. The EU is concerned about becoming overly reliant or overly tied into military alignments with third countries, i.e. countries that are not members of the European Union. On trade, the issues are pretty familiar. The UK has some red lines. Its government set out in its manifesto before it won the election in July that it did not want to join an EU customs union, did not want to be part of the single market, and did not want to sign up to freedom of movement of people between the EU and the UK. For its part, the EU is consistently worried about cherry picking, i.e. the idea that the UK as a country outside of the EU gets to enjoy some of the benefits of the single market in some areas without signing up to the full package. And they're worried about that because it undermines this idea of the EU as a single coherent project where members get certain benefits but also certain responsibilities.
Now, of course, there will be issues which are difficult to resolve, and on areas on which we will stand firm. There will be no return to freedom of movement, no return to the customs union, no return to the single market. But we will find constructive ways to work together and deliver for the British people.
Ouais, vas-y, mets-toi à gauche, ouais.
The broader geopolitical context, the fact that the EU and the UK are both worried about a more unpredictable America, have to deal with the threat from Russia and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, means that we might see some progress on those long-standing sticking points because both sides recognise that they share some consistent interests and consistent risks.
So this is all part of
Yeah. Routinely. So
you've got to adapt it. Particularly those that come back from the problem. Exactly right. Yeah. It's not to say that we
Yeah.
No.
The bigger question here is whether we're looking at a generational shift in America, whether even after this Trump administration, even with a different president, we will see a US that is much less inclined to spend the time, the resources to station the troops, to focus its diplomatic bandwidth on European security, and is much more concerned on focusing on the risk from China or having more of a presence in the Indo-Pacific. That is a significant change in the US's security posture, and that requires a response from Europeans, not necessarily just spending more on defence, but spending together, planning together, thinking about the type of shared military capabilities that are needed to defend the continent.
You bring it up, Howard. This is our great Secretary of Commerce. So if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. With this deal, the UK joins the United States in affirming that reciprocity and fairness is an essential and vital principle of international trade.
And just by happenstance, we have the Prime Minister on the phone, and we were great allies if they like them better, if we make great products, they'll be buying those products, but they were not available in the UK.